Wow. $4 million. A little under $4 million. That's the difference. A little over $4 million. That's the difference. For 3 years, which is half the term of a senator. And because the members of Congress and the Senate allowed themselves to engage in such a completely ludicrous process of consolidation and exploitation, everybody in the fucking country has already been hooked up as their compensation. And because you kept bitching us down so badly, you would have to kill all of us for 3 years in order to pay the debt. Omar, what's up? Hey, listen, man, I gotta talk to you about something. Look, I just did some research. Right? Some outstanding matters at hand. And first of all, let me do a little bit of math here. Okay, times two. All right, so you are, for the year 2009 2010, owed a staff budget of $1,889,342. Hey, you know what that is? That is close to how they tried to recalibrate the transportation budget for 2018 during the 2017 budget process for 2018. Actually, I submitted this petition to the Supreme Court of the United States accusing Congress of being involved in a racket that the abuse of the congressional budget process was actually demonstrative of a pattern of racketeering activity. Why? Because they didn't actually do what they were constitutionally required to do. Instead, what they did is they abused their political office to set up kickbacks and hedge funds for themselves and their political supporters, right? So that $1,889,342 that would have went to the congressional staff that would have worked for you during your first term of Congress in 2019 ended up getting spent on something else, right? I mean, it's a big problem. And so, what if you actually served up until now? What if you served 5 terms, right? So that would be $9,446,710. $9,446,710 that in 10 years would have been part of the budget your staff would have worked with. Do you think I would have been on your staff that whole time? I'll tell you what, if I had been on your staff that whole time, I would have had a lot less involvement with direct, literal weapons development, right? As a matter of fact, we probably would have cut a lot of those R&D, a lot of those R&D appropriations. We probably would have cut a lot of that. And what do you think we would have done with that instead? Do you think you would have seriously considered my proposals around contracting and modifying the federal contract bidding process, including the manner in which the contract process ended up dealing with appropriation and reconciliation of outstanding obligations associated with the Department of Defense budget? You think maybe we could have guarded against and prevented against what they did with that alleged Pentagon audit, which from my perspective showed 4 different major accounting firms basically hacking the Pentagon and poaching tech, including specific kinds of tech that they, I believe, had already pegged for their clients, besides the Pentagon, by the way, so that people could be trafficked in efforts for them to try to capture what had happened with the technology that ended up getting poached as part of that audit, rather than there being an actual congressional hearing and or actual cases discussing it from the various matters in which constitutional violations were implicated, and allowing for a legitimate recapitulation and potential restitution, which would also have calibrated with a global movement, because there would have necessarily been a need to have supporting evidence as well as processes in order to hold the culprits accountable. And in the course of doing that, there would have been a substantially less demand for products that are used in acts of warfare. And we might have been able to have actually accounted for our outstanding carbon budget, right? Okay, well, we might have had one more, right? So then we get to 11,333,052 if you had gotten elected for a sixth term, which some people do. Would I have had to have filed that petition with the district court in Dallas, attempting to impeach the Texas State Senate, and or the one having to do with attempting to file disciplinary grievances against a magistrate judge and a presiding judge here in this district for their refusal to check against abuses of other members of the judiciary in Texas? But by the way, not only in Texas, you know that? Because I also attempted to contract members of the prosecutor's office in New York, as well as California, as well as Washington, D.C. Right? So that's 3 different district court systems that were contacted directly, besides just the ones in Texas. I mean, the problem is that didn't happen. You never got to avail yourself, or rather, we never got to be availed of having those kind of resources. So $11 million in 12 years, instead of $11 million going to up to 22 people a year for 12 years, I have no evidence that anybody else except me, or that everybody else, including me, got allowed to be wrapped up into a secret inventory that the president used as part of his own personal financing scheme that unfortunately has now got us in a situation that, as I understand, kind of equivalent to what was mentioned at the beginning of this video, means that in order for us to meet the obligations we promised the world a long time ago, without actually busting corruption in this country that wasn't just speculating on waving the default off onto somebody else, we would have to all in this country refuse to, or be put in a position where we were absolutely denied any income for 3 years. That we were assessed a zero value for 3 years. I saw that. You know where I saw that? I saw that in the federal budget. I saw that in the congressional budget process for 2017, the 000. I saw it. It was right there. I'm not kidding. And not only that, I met it myself with 3 consecutive years of zero income before the announcement of COVID-19, right? It's a phenomena. I don't know what to say. I think in some ways it was one of those things where people had hoped to put it on my head and justify cutting it off, and somehow that was supposed to correct for the egregiousness of the error. But just so you know, it's been my entire life since they took responsibility for the very significant warning that came with the OPEC embargo, which wasn't about the OPEC embargo alone. What was the OPEC embargo really about? I mean, it predated the Israeli bank stock scandal, by the way. So I'm going to settle myself for that 43 that we've been due for several years. I'm reaching out to you personally, Omar Lopez, and everybody from the Green Party that was involved with the 2008 congressional election season, including those that were supporters of the previous efforts of Cynthia McKinney to run for president, and that also understanding was connected to her efforts as part of the 9/11 Commission. And I hope you will support me in saying we need to be restituted, and the world needs to be restituted to the tune of 43. And we've needed it for a while. And the longer we avoid addressing it, the more out of balance it gets.